Thanks, Cody, for joining me, mate, to talk about your very first issue of my first White Dwarf, which is issue 193.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
No problem, mate. We're looking at a very evocative image on the front cover here.
Yeah, I was about to say this is definitely the reason I remember this is my first White Dwarf is because of this cover. And me and you were talking about it on the live stream we did the past week. That the first thing that grabbed me about everything in gaming, but especially in Games Workshop, was the art. You know, and this piece right here really grabbed me and stuck in my memory. Yeah, I remember. These are definitely the guys I grew up with White Dwarf, right? So like
Mm.
they kind of had this other persona in the magazine that maybe was part them and maybe part exaggerated, but that character really came out and spoke to me as a kid. I was like, man, I want to meet these guys. I want to hang out with them. They seem cool.
Yeah, for sure.
uh, and of course, they always had nicknames for themselves. And yeah, I always enjoyed the editorial staff back then. They were really cool. They seemed really cool, anyways.
Well, thanks to Adrian Wood for joining our Discord at the Crown of Command, so you now can go and chat with him and interact with him now in real life. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I heard the interview with Adrian. You did, what was that, about a week ago?
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've ever heard Adrian Wood speak in person.
Right.
And I have to say, it wasn't really how I imagined him. Uh, you know,
Tell
which
that
I
walk.
mean, yeah, because you always see him and he looks like he's like, yeah, he looks he. I think he always played orcs, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and you always see him and he's always like screaming or like got his this like heavy metal face. So yeah, but he seems like a really chill, laid back guy. Not at all how I
Yeah.
imagined him to be. But it's interesting, like back then, because we would have never heard these people unless you worked there in the studio or whatever, right?
Mm.
Or went to a game stay in the UK or whatever. So you had to kind of imagine in your head what these people sounded like, and it's weird. Like, what is this? Almost 30 years later, and actually hearing that person talk, it's pretty cool. Necromunda must have just came out pretty recently before this, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because when I was working
Yeah.
at the store, yeah, Necromunda was the Christmas release.
Always love this the Dark Angels interrogator right there.
Yeah.
That's a great model. And not
That's,
only that cover with him on it, which I think is the next issue ever, actually,
mm,
uh, sticks in my mind too. That's a really cool cover.
yeah.
We'll always love, these real pictures of guys playing in the studio or in stores and stuff. It always got me really excited about wanting to actually play and seeing all the cool like studio terrain and stuff. I mean, like that castle down there is amazing looking with the village and all
Mm.
that. It looks great. It's fantastic. And I was looking at this earlier in the Shadow of the Horned Rat. I forgot that probably came out around this time or was coming out. And I remember getting that when it first came out, and that was a really cool game. I remember being really excited to be able to play Warhammer on the computer. That seemed like a really cool idea, and it actually, it was actually a pretty good game. New releases, always fun to look at the new releases every month. I like looking back at these and seeing what stuff cost back then. It's pretty interesting. And when you do the math, you realize that it wasn't cheap back then.
Yeah, exactly, mate. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. And the Hellhound, I remember this very well. This is probably the most memorable article I remember from this issue was the Hellhound, because at that time, my favorite army when I first got into 40K was the Imperial Guard. And until about 10 years ago, my friend started an Imperial Guard army, and he used to bring a Hellhound every time, and the he never got to use it. Every game, it would just we would get rid of that thing as fast as possible, so it never got a chance. Yeah, very cool. Always loved the Rough Riders. Those are probably one of my favorite like sculpts of the Imperial Guard range. Warhammer Quest. I didn't play Warhammer Quest back then. Always wanted to. I didn't get to play it until I was much older, and now I love that game. It's, in my opinion, it's probably the best dungeon crawler game ever made, really. And I know they've done remakes of it and such, but the one remake, I think they've made like two or three remakes, like different games. and they just don't hold up to the original. The original was just an incredible game. Here we go. So this is probably the most memorable article from this White Dwarf for me, because I don't know what it was about Andy Chambers, but as a kid, I just thought he was the coolest dude in the world. He was like the Mick Jagger of of like of
I
like
love that.
Games Workshop. For some reason, he became like my favorite dude, in the studio back then. And every time I'd see an Andy Chambers article, I get real excited.
Mm.
Because he used to convert everything. That he used to have to convert everything before, as he was writing new games or new codexes and stuff. And so that little Chaos Army there, he converted from scratch, except for the Plague Marines. Those are obviously the plastic ones. But really, really cool conversions. And I love that they included that kind of stuff in there. That was stuff he actually did and painted. Of course, I'm sure somebody in the studio probably touched it up a little bit for the photographs, but really cool to see. And of course, we got the bell up there, which is part of the famous Skaven army. Really awesome. But yeah, I really love those Chaos Marines. They look really cool. Really cool conversions.
So
Well,
it looks like Jake Thornton beat me to an interview with Andy Chambers. He's got it in first at 1995. It only took me like 30 years later or 28 years later to get another interview with him. So yeah, but
yeah,
if you
very
want to
cool.
if you want to interact with Andy Chambers, he is now part of the Discord at the Crown of Command. So there you go. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Thanks, Andy. Down there, his converted Redemptionist gang, which is effing awesome, right? And that little
Yeah.
diorama and everything. And his Skaven Blood Bowl team. And I like the photos of his like messy desk area of all the stuff he's messing around with and building and everything. That's a really cool. It's a really cool shot. Again, it really gives you like makes you feel like you're more connected to these people, right?
Mm, that's very true.
Seeing like their messy desk area, like they probably wouldn't take like a picture of that nowadays and like
Yeah.
and put it in White Dwarf, right? Really awesome.
Yeah.
And his infamous dog soldiers up there, those are really cool conversions. Like I don't really know what he converted those out of. Maybe like Chaos Marauders, yeah. Tyranids. I never knew anyone. I think I've only known one person in my whole life out of the hundreds of people I've played 40K with that has played Tyranids. The bigger they are, dealing with powerful character or big characters, right? So
Yep.
this whole article telling you, how to deal with big characters in Warhammer Fantasy. But we do get one of the little cartoons. I think that little cartoon picture down there appeared in the 5th edition rule book later
Mm,
on, right?
you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Space orcs. Yeah. Well, the orcs were my first army. And I did not have any of these models, except, of course, I had the models from the starter box. And I did have a bunch of those bikes, and those were cool, very cool sculpts. Games Day and Golden Demon always. I mean, this stuff was awesome, always awesome to look at. I guess we're about to get into the Golden Demon stuff. Oh yeah, very cool. Looks like some Catachan rooting out some Gretchen and orcs out of their tree house.
Yeah. Apparently, this was for sale on eBay recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Matthew
Very
Parks is trying to sell it, but I think it was unsuccessful. I'm not sure.
wow. No Umis allowed, right? In the tree house.
Yep.
This is pretty cool, man.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
surprised nobody bought this. This is neat. Like if I had the
Yeah.
cash, I would buy it.
That's history, mate. That's history for you.
Right. So these are all amazing. I mean, these paint jobs still hold up. They're just
Oh yeah.
incredible.
Absolutely.
I especially love that the first place single miniature up there, the Dire Avengers Exarch. That banner is incredible looking, very
Yeah.
creative, very interesting. And the model itself, like it's hard to look at the model because I just get distracted by the banner, but the model itself is incredible, very
Mm,
cool.
yeah.
The scouts are really cool. I like how they have like that Mohican like war paint going on.
Hmm.
These Space Marines are really neat. I'm not sure what chapter they're from. It may be some just made up chapter. it's interesting to see that they still have a lot of the old, this guy's using a lot of the old like Rogue Trader Marines in there. Most of those are just like the old beaky Marines. There's a couple of the newer ones from this time in there. That Dreadnought's amazing.
Yeah.
And especially what impresses me the most about that is posing those legs. That was probably a real bitch to do. I'm not sure what this thing is. I'm not sure what this other Eldar jet bike's supposed to be, but it looks awesome. And the vehicle down there is really cool too. Kind of like a maintenance vehicle.
Mm.
Very cool. Oh yeah, these are awesome. Look at that vampire.
Yeah.
that just screams 90s, man.
The lollipop sword.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Kislev General up there, I guess. That high elf champion's really cool looking. Those night goblins are amazing. Really good banner.
Yeah.
Really good banner. Always impressed by the banners because I'm just terrible at doing banners. Yeah, the classic ogres. I love those. My favorite ogre sculpt and probably my favorite figure out of that those ogres. Yeah, he's Nagash.
He's something.
Yeah. But the paint job's good.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really good. It's really holds up to like Mike McVeigh's actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really well done. I think he would have got really gutted to come second, but Barry's such a cool guy. I love Barry's work, and I'm really happy he got first place in this category.
This Titan is quite incredible. That definitely is very eye-catching.
Yep, it's like eye bleeding almost.
Yeah,
The
you cannot miss that
saturation of
thing.
color. Yeah.
Best epic battle force. Very cool. Always wanted to get into epic back then, and I got into it later, and we played maybe just a handful of games with it, and then the friend that I played it with moved away, and we never played it again.
Ah, that's a shame, mate.
Yeah, so that's one game I've always wanted to get back into, and I've always loved small scale miniatures. Always been fascinated by them. And then over here we got this diorama, which is awesome. I love dioramas, and used to love. It was one of my favorite things to see the dioramas, either from the studio or people from, the Golden Demon, and always seeing how creative they got with the dioramas. And these are really, really cool.
Is it like a
It
Thunderhawk
looks,
gunship down there?
yeah, and it looks like a Gene Stealer Colt limousine, and like Gene Stealers are like
Right.
bursting out of it.
Yeah, there is too. There's a big screamer killer on top of the hill there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow, that's huge, that bloody thing. That's massive.
yeah, it's probably why they didn't get any
Yeah.
close-ups. Oh, these are the young bloods, huh?
Yeah. Now this is an interesting time because they had like a category for epic, which is unbelievable, and then had a young
Yeah.
bloods category. So young painters could show off their skills and grow. But like I mean, these guys were just as good as the adult painters, I think.
Yeah, no shit. I would have never known that these were kids. I mean, they paint better than I ever could.
Yeah. Amazing,
These are
isn't it?
fantastic. Outlanders, I guess that was about to come out or had come out already, or might have been coming out this month. This White Dwarf was released, maybe. Target in sight. So these are like variations on the second edition 40K scenarios. And I was looking at this earlier today, and this actually looks really cool. I'm going to have to look at some of these because I play a lot of second edition 40K. That's kind of my go-to game, and these mission variants and stuff sound really interesting. And all the Necromunda gangs before Outlanders came out. And man, I love these Necromunda miniatures. These
Mhm.
classic sculpts just hold up so well. They're just really, really cool. Stillmania, Nigel Stillman giving his sage advice as he always did, and he always had really good advice. And this is him talking about how to plan your army when you're purchasing an army. And I think it's actually really good. This is actually a really good article, still very relevant today. Just an old hack by Gav Thorpe. I guess this is a Necromunda article.
Yeah.
But I do like the arbitrator Chambers deposed. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And these House Delac, I always like the Delac miniatures, and these are really good. These are really good paint jobs. Really cool. They always looked super sketchy. House Escher, my favorite house.
Me too, mate.
I love these figures. Love them. Absolutely fantastic. I think these Just Goodwin.
Yep, all just good one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Warhammer: The Game of Fantasy Battles, the 4th edition box set, which was really before I guess it wasn't before my time because I got into it at this time. Like this is exactly when I was getting into Warhammer and stuff, but I never played 4th edition. I don't even really remember seeing the box set for it until much later on, of course, nowadays. But it looked like a very cool box set with and I have a lot of these models and love the models out of there, especially the Night Goblins and the regular Goblin Spearmen and stuff. And Mike McVeigh, he was another big hero of mine growing up. And that's, he was the guy that basically taught me how to paint, right? Because, like back then there was nobody around here really that showed me how to paint or anything. I just kind of had to figure it out. It's like I vividly remember like the skeleton one, and all that. And I think I actually bought some skeletons. I couldn't figure out really what I was doing, and I bought a couple skeleton models just because this looked really easy to do, right? And I was like, okay, I can do that, and this is an awesome diorama. I definitely remember this as a kid. It's definitely etched in my brain for whatever reason. Always loved dioramas and stuff, and always wanted to build some dioramas like this. Just never really. It was always felt like a waste of miniatures. I could.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like I'm like, well, I could be using these, but looking at these old white dwarfs and stuff lately, I have some like just random figures laying around. I think that's something I'd like to get into is trying my hand at making some dioramas. Dark elves, amazing figures. Love these sculpts from back then. I especially love the witch elves. I think they're probably some of my favorite fantasy sculpts out of any of the fantasy range back then. This must be an epic article, it looks like. Adrian Wood, and see he's doing another like heavy metal pose. And this just looks like an article for like tactics and stuff in Epic. And I always like looking at these, like in the battle reports, or even in these articles, just like looking at like their maps and diagrams. Those really always fascinated me. And the Titan Legions box set, again, this is not something I ever really got to experience, because I played the Epic that came out right after that. So whatever version that was the edition I played. Version of Epic. Q&A, always cool to see the Q&A stuff in there. I'm sure it was very helpful back then because there was a lot of interesting things in the rules. But to be honest, we never needed a Q&A back then. We just kind of were like, just made a judgment like we did now, right? But it was cool that they did this kind of stuff back then. These were always really helpful for me growing up. And again, this is how I learned to make terrain, was white dwarf, right? Like I just followed all the examples in these articles, and this is how I learned to make all my first terrain. And of course, with some trial and error, of course, too. And I definitely remember this article about building a table, and I didn't have like a proper gaming table back then. I mean, we always just played on the floor and just laid out a piece of fabric. But when we got older though, we actually had because my dad's a carpenter, he helped us build some tables. We built some real tables like this. And yeah, all these examples in the White Dwarf were really, really helpful to me when I was young. Well, there you go. If you want to get a job at Games Workshop, probably don't want to back today or back then. What is this? Jervis Johnson, Azrael, the Dark Angels. The only, so I really didn't like wasn't a Space Marine guy. when I was a kid, and I'm still not really a Space Marine guy. I think it mainly came from the reason that everybody played Space Marines, and it just really turned me off of Space Marines. Marine chapter I always was attracted to was the Dark Angels. I thought they always had a really cool aesthetic, and they had a different sort of aesthetic than the other chapters and stuff. Warhammer Chronicles of War. And I forgot all about this actually until I was looking at this today, that this even existed.
Me too, mate. Me too. It was a surprise to me. I never knew it existed either until I got back into the hobby and back like 5 years ago.
The raid, this looks like a battle report, which was the thing I always rushed to look at whenever I got my hands on a white dwarf. Absolutely loved the battle reports. And it was probably my favorite part of reading White Dwarf. Jake Thornton, and who's the other one playing? Ian Pinstock. Yeah. So this is really cool. Orcs versus Dark Elves. Very cool looking orc army. Looks like a cool battle. Like the Dark Elves are invading this. They always had these really thematic scenarios when they were playing battle reports in White Dwarf. It wasn't just usually wasn't just a pitched battle. You know, they had some kind of story and theme and scenario they made up just for the battle report. And I remember taking these ideas and scenarios, and they were always really inspiring, to use in games we actually played. But yeah, I always loved the battle reports, and I always really loved the overhead maps of the battle reports. Mail order. I never did mail order back in the day. I used to just go to the hobby store and buy my stuff, or the game store. We did have a game store here that carried a lot of GW stuff, but usually we just went to Hobby Town. Never had a White Dwarf subscription, but my friend Andrew did, and that's where I read all these White Dwarfs. Really always like looking at the new miniatures coming out. I guess these are the new releases, or I think usually this was just stuff that was featured. Like it was either featured in the battle reports or whatever, or it was like a new release, but it was always cool to look at the miniatures in their raw condition section. I have never seen that Goliath leader miniature ever.
Oh, right.
Anywhere. I have never seen that figure anywhere. And I noticed that today. I have never seen that miniature in my entire life, but that's a really cool figure. It's a really cool figure. Necromunda scum.
Says it all.
Those are really cool.
Yeah.
I especially like the dude with it looks like he's got like one of those old timey leather football helmets on, and it's like goggles. Yeah. Really cool. The bounty hunters. I really like these bounty hunters. Dark Angels. Yeah, again, I didn't really have a thing for Space Marines, but I always really liked the Dark Angels. Yeah, awesome. Always loved looking at these big color shots in the back of the White Dwarfs. And I would just stare at these forever. They're just awesome looking. And just imagining, again, having all these figures painted up on this beautiful terrain and playing this battle out. And still dreaming about that. Still hadn't quite reached that goal yet. But
yeah, that is a decent swarm of Tyranids coming at those Blood Angels. I don't fancy their chances somehow.
No, I don't either. Of course, I don't know. They're in that big bunker over there.
Yeah.
They might save their skin. That whirlwind's a little too close range to do anything.
I think so, yeah. Gotta kill more of those assault marines and those gene stealers coming at them, that's for sure. Well, Cody, look, it's been a massive issue to cover with you, mate. I hope it brought back a lot of nostalgic goodness to your heart and your Herohammer heart, and that I hope you get to collect some more of those wanted miniatures, especially the Escher gang. We need to sort you out one of those, mate, for sure. And I hope you enjoyed going through this issue with me, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I always get really nostalgic looking at these White Dwarfs, especially from this time. Around 95, 96, 97, because I just spent hours and hours as a kid looking at these, and it still really holds up. It's still really awesome stuff. And this is really where it's at for me. So yeah, thanks for looking at this, and it was great looking at it with you, Josh.
No problem, mate. And please, people, go and check out our live stream from last, I think Friday, where I
Uh-huh.
talked to GMCody himself. And you can check out his YouTube channel and check out the awesome content that Cody's doing over there. All right, until next time, guys. Thanks very much. Thanks, Cody. And we'll see you again next time, guys.